The Assembly will hear an address from His Excellency Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, President of the Republic of Mali. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, President of the Republic of Mali, and invite him to address the Assembly.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée générale.
President of the General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. As I take the floor before this august assembly, one duty befalls me at the outset. It is to extend to you the brotherly and friendly greetings of the people of Mali, from Kai to Kidal, from Taudeni to Sikasso. Next, I wish to extend my most warm congratulations and wish for every success to you, Professor Tijani Mohamed Bande, from the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You were elected to preside over this session. I would like to assure you that the full cooperation of Mali is presented to you. I would also like to greet and welcome Madam Maria Fernandez Espinosa Garces from Ecuador, and thank her for having so brilliantly led the General Assembly during its 73rd session, with a remarkable amount of talent. How could I forget, as I begin my statement, to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, whose commitment for the ideals of peace, security, development and the respect for human rights is still burning brightly. President, this session will be marked by, amongst other things, by the celebration of the 75th anniversary of the creation of the United Nations. For Mali, no occasion could be more beautiful than this celebration to reaffirm our commitment to the values, purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, and our conviction that only collective and concerted action will allow us to address the multiple challenges of our age and to achieve our common objectives of peace, security and development for all. This is particularly true given the topic chosen for our session, that is to say, galvanizing multilateral efforts for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action and inclusion. There is nothing more urgent than stepping up our efforts and actions in these fields if we wish to tackle the root causes of instability in some of our countries. President, over history there has been no nation whose trajectory has not been littered with difficult moments. Mali knows this sadly only too well. Since January 2012, we are subject to a terrorist threat on a day-to-day basis which seeks only to undermine our very deep-rooted foundations. But if we are to believe the old adage, whereby it is in difficult times when you know who your friends are, we must say that Mali is no short of friends. Further example of this is we can see the many types of support, where political, diplomatic and military support the international community has provided to Mali, whether this be to eradicate the terrorist hordes or combat the barbary of these terrorist hordes, or indeed to reconstruct our much-suffering unity. The support has not been lacking, and I would like to welcome this. It is largely the support owes its existence to the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement for Mali, which stemmed from the Algiers process, and I remain particularly attached to this. One of the major achievements of this agreement is the lack of clashes between the defence forces and security in Mali and the signatory movements. But also, there is a progressive return of trust between parties in Mali. Additionally, more than 500 former fighters have been reintegrated, and around 2,000 ex-fighters have been registered in our operational coordination mechanism as part of the DDR process. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of this DDR process, we have made progress, so that this process, which was greatly deliberated upon us, is now called the accelerated DDR process. And we welcome this because, clear as day, this is the groundwork for re-establishing the authority of state across the whole national territory. But we must not ignore, however, that the road ahead remains long, and this is a road that leads to lasting peace and reconciliation in our country. To achieve this, we must undertake political and institutional reforms that are set forth in the agreement, in the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement. In this connection, I am delighted to highlight that following lack of very unsuccessful attempts in 2017 and 2018, Mali is preparing actively so for holding as soon as possible an inclusive national dialogue, which should lead to national reconciliation and a strengthening of democracy in our country. In parallel, in order to ensure the normal functioning and stability of our institutions that I take on my shoulders, we thought it judicious to extend to the 2nd of May 2020 the mandate of representatives in our National Assembly. This will then allow it to adopt political and institutional reforms that were recommended during our inclusive national dialogue. Given that I am in favour of the quest of peace and national reconciliation, I enacted on the 24th of July 2019 the Law of National Agreement. While it exonerates criminal prosecution of those which are planned for people who had committed or who were complicit in crimes during the painful events in Mali since 2012. This law does, however, exclude from its scope war crimes or crimes against humanity, rape, and crimes that have no statute of limitation. It stipulates, moreover, that the measures for recognition and reparation for victims who were directly or collaterally affected from these painful times for our people. It also is underpinned by the remarkable work of the Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission, which has heard from 14,000 people who are victims of the crises that happened in our country. So it is in this concerned as we are by national reconciliation and the reduction of disparity that undermine national cohesion that the National Assembly adopted this year laws that created a zone for development in the region of northern Mali, which was set out for in the Algeria Accord, and then the government created the Sustainable Development Fund to a tune of $72 million American to be a financial tool to implement this development strategy in the north of Mali. To date, $20 million American have already been mobilized to finance urgent priority expenditure in Kidal, Menaka, Timbuktu, and Gao. President, while these different areas of progress were made possible thanks to the joint will of all Malian parties to the agreement, it was also possible thanks to the support and accompaniment of international community partners. Here, I wish to welcome the action that was oh so vital of the United Nations Missions for Stabilization in Mali, MINUSMA. MINUSMA is working in an environment that I know is particularly complex and difficult. Here, I would like to pay tribute to the bravery and sacrifice of the men and women working for MINUSMA, as well as other international forces who are deployed in our territory and I would like to pay particular tribute to them for their contribution to maintaining peace and security in the region, not only in Mali. Within the G5 Sahel, we are fully aware that only security will not allow us to have lasting peace in the region that we have been looking for so ardently. There are many obstacles in the way and challenges in the way of this for the implementation of our agreement. Amongst these challenges, the environment, the extremely volatile security environment, which has been marked by a spike in attacks from terrorist groups, violent extremism, and drug trafficking against civilian populations, defence forces and security forces. But there are striking challenges that are linked to our development too. This is why, alongside the security domain, we've been working together for a priority investment programme. This covers around 40 projects in the fields of defence and security, governance, infrastructure, resilience and human development. It will allow us to provide appropriate responses to the root causes of instability by creating economic opportunities as well as social and development opportunities for our people, particularly our young people. Another challenge of no less importance is the availability of suitable financial resources to implement the Alger Accord. This is why, while we thank our partners for their efforts already undertaken, however, I must call on them again to honour their commitments that they signed up to during the Conference for Development in Mali, organised in Paris in October 2015 at the OECD. Also in the Conference for Coordination of Financial Backers and Partners of the G5 Sahel, which was held in Nouakchott, Mauritania, on the 6th of December 2018. Here I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome the Sahel Alliance, which seeks to pool efforts and coordinate the commitment of our partners in these 6 priority action fields, that is to say, youth employment, rural development, food security, energy and climate, governance and decentralisation, access to basic social services and security, for a financial cost of €6 billion between 2018 and 2022. President, efforts undertaken to stabilise and develop the regions in the north of Mali mean that I should not forget the worrying situation that is prevailing in the regions in the centre of our country. Quite the contrary. I must clarify in passing that these 2 major challenges faced by Mali today are inextricably linked. Indeed, having managed to destabilise regions in the north of Mali, terrorists and other criminal groups expanded their reach, their zone of influence and illicit activity to the regions in the centre of the country. They exploited disputes between different armed groups which so far had been managed in a non-violent manner. Here, I would also like to highlight that the motivations of these terrorist groups have little to do with religion and even less to do with development. It has been an Islamic country since the 11th century. The issue for them is to ensure that they have the space to ensure that their criminal activities can prosper, including trafficking of weapons and human beings and illicit goods. They exploit the low, weak presence of the state and the services of defence and security in the concerned regions. The clashes that were hastily baptised into communal tensions, which alas bereaved regions of Ségou and Mopti, have beyond these areas affected the Malian nation as a whole. This is why I instructed the government to take a series of measures on the political, security, regulatory and judicial front to re-establish order and security in the affected regions. The strengthening of security on the ground, the creation of new posts in the security field and in strategic zones, and the involvement of several hundreds of young people in the area in a special programme for reducing intercommunal violence are all part of these activities. This is the same true of the recovery of numerous weapons and the ongoing disarmament of militia, as well as actions for development and provision of basic social services for the benefit of our people. All of these operations seek to better respond to the challenges of governance and security, to coordinate all of these actions and to involve all groups in our country in their implementation, including political leaders, traditional ones and religious leaders too. I appointed in June 2019, Professor Dion Kounda Traoré, former acting president in Mali during the transition, to be my High Representative for the centre of Mali. President, crises in the regions of the north and the centre of Mali have caused large-scale movements of thousands of our compatriots, whether they have taken refuge in neighbouring countries or if they are IDPs. Their safe and dignified return to their homes is a major concern for my government. My government has launched vast, far-reaching programmes that seek to improve the quality of living in the long term for all people in Mali. Healthcare assistance through regimes for health coverage is one of these major challenges too. The IOM, the International Organization for Migration, the High Commissioner for Refugees and OCHA too have all been helping us through these emergency regional intervention plans for the regions in Timbuktu, Gao, Kidal and Mopti. The same is true for our involvement in the Pan-African Risk Management Mutual which was ratified in Mali in 2016, and for 4 seasons now has allowed us to provide assurance contracts to cover the consequences of climate upheavals. On top of these measures, born of urgency, I must say, and we have others which are more structural. Firstly, I'd like to talk about youth employment, because I believe in the youth of Mali. I decided to dedicate my second mandate to the promotion of our young people. They are the hope for today and certainly the architects of our future. In the same way, I firmly believe in the women of Mali and in their immeasurable contributions to the process of stabilizing and developing our country. I will continue to appoint them in great numbers to decision-making and levels and posts with high responsibility in line with the law from 2015 on the promotion of gender in decision-making bodies in Mali. Given the place of inclusive and sustainable development in the topic of our meeting today, I can't ignore the granting for 2018 the approval of 3,000 social housing units for people who have low or medium income, but also Malian diaspora. Nor can I not share the initiative of the African Development Bank, which we adopted signed up to recently in Ouagadougou, entitled Desert to Power. This was launched by the extraordinary session of the G5 Sahel for industrial development, where a country that, like Mali, that produces a large amount of cotton, we only transform 2% of it on the ground. So therefore it's very important for us to have textile industry. So this African Development Bank initiative is very much welcome. President, despite the regional and national challenges that I've just evoked, the people and government of Mali are following the situation in Africa and in the rest of the world very closely. This is such that Mali remains very concerned by the situation in Libya, which continues to have a negative impact on the region of the Sahel. I call on all parties and stakeholders in Libya to prioritize dialogue and to seek peaceful solutions with a view to a lasting and swift solution to this crisis. Equally, Mali is following with great concern the situation in the Middle East, particularly in the occupied Palestinian territories. The Malian people is reaffirming its full support to the brotherly Palestinian people in its legitimate fight for self-determination. The government of Mali calls for a resumption of negotiations between Israel and Palestine for a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side, which is said many times today, and it is in line with relevant Security Council resolutions on peace, so within safe and internationally recognized borders. Moreover, Mali calls for the end to the deadly violence which continues, alas, to bereave and inflict a humanitarian disaster on the brotherly peoples in Syria and Yemen. On issues of international migration, Mali, a country that is a country of origin, transit and settlement of migrants, is renewing its commitment for multilateral cooperation and international solidarity. I call with all my heart to respect the rights of migrants in line with the relevant provisions of international conventions and treaties, particularly the Global Compact for Safe, Regular and Ordered Migration and the Global Compact for Refugees, adopted in December 2018 in Marrakesh, Morocco. Mali renews its call for the reform of the United Nations Security Council so that it may be more representative and more inclusive. This is justice being served. Through my voice, Mali reaffirms its commitment to the joint African position, common African position on the reform of this council in line with the Azawani consensus. A Sahel country, which is essentially an agricultural one with animal husbandry and fishing, Mali is very much concerned by climate change. This is one of the major challenges for the survival and development of humankind. Indeed, my country is on the front line of the effects of climate change, characterized by the spread of the desert and its impact on fauna and flora, the drying up of our rivers and our waterways, the increasing temperatures and the number of floods. This is why I would like to reaffirm here Mali's commitment to the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. Here, In this connection, in the context of the Climate Summit of the Secretary-General, we will submit, as alongside the co-leaders of the Finance Climate Coalition, France, Qatar and Jamaica, a specific proposal which seeks to launch and accelerate a wave of investment, a low-carbon investment, and refocusing global saving towards infrastructure and procedures of industrial production and agricultural production that is in line with the goals of the Paris Accord. Equally on this point, Mali will work within the African Union for a systematic integration of the climate issue into its cooperation between the continent and within all of its strategic partners. Mali welcomes the trends underway in Sudan, particularly the creation of a national union government stemmed from the agreement signed between the military institutions and the leaders of the uprising, which at the same time led to the implementation of a sovereign council tasked with leading the transition in our brotherly country. President, to conclude, I would strongly underscore that 75 years after its creation, the United Nations continues to demonstrate how relevant it is in our common quest and our collective efforts to spare future generations from the scourge of war. In doing so, I would recall that peace has no price. Therefore, we must cherish it because it is no humanity, no way of coexistence can prevail otherwise. These are the values and postures that should give a sense to our very existence and provide individuals and human communities with the taste for the future that the French president referred to yesterday. We must therefore build this peace not as a cult but as a culture, with the term, everything that the term has in connotations in terms of respect for diversity, the recognitions of the other, empathy, solidarity, in a word, fraternity. Fraternity that we have more need than ever to give sense of our human condition. I thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Mali for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.